Skager out to center. Lundvik shoots. He scores! Johnny Lundvik does it again!
Jarvis in close shot. There's a goal. Seth Jarvis, the 17-year-old, short side, glove side, high, just under the crossbar.
Cutting to the front of the net, and they score. Reese Newkirk along the right wing just took the pass. That was phenomenal patience from Seth Jarvis and the Winterhawks.
Hey, this is Reese Newkirk, and you're listening to the Pucklandia podcast.
Welcome into Pucklandia. Pleased to be joined by a special co-host, Sean Mullen from Swift Current, Saskatchewan, and also Kurt Weaver with the You Can Play Project, the Chief Operations Officer. And we're happy to have you on the show tonight, Kurt.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So this being a Portland Winterhawks-centric podcast, the Winterhawks are hosting their Pride Night this Friday, the 2nd of February against the Kelowna Rockets, and it's a pretty cool event that they do annually. They are able to wear their jerseys, for the duration of the game, and they have pretty good looking jerseys again this year. But kind of so in promotion of such things, and just kind of wanted to have a wide ranging, what is Pride Night? Why do we do it? Why do we still need to do it? What are we trying to accomplish? Those types of things, and so. I felt that having a representative of the You Can Play Project would be, a pretty valuable conversation to have. So, I guess Kurt, kind of where do you want to go to start this thing?
No, I think I'll give you a little bit about You Can Play quickly, just to kind of lay the groundwork, and then we talk about the Pride Night itself. But I'm glad to see they're playing the Kelowna Rockets. I got a good friend who lives in Kelowna, so hopefully I can do a little smack talking with him, little chirping if I can before the game. But so You Can Play. It actually turns 12 years old this year, and we got to start within hockey, within the NHL. And we launched because, as you can imagine, what locker rooms sound like in 2010, 2011. Not the most welcoming place for maybe some different minority groups, but especially the LGBTQ plus community. And so, as you think about what a hockey locker room sounds like at that time. Be it honestly men's and women's hockey both, it needed some work and some thought around how do we make this place more welcoming, how do we make this sport more inclusive, how do we welcome more people into it. And then really we got launched from that original idea of how do we make sport more inclusive and make it a more welcoming place. And we've been working with then, really since our beginning with the NHL, but then we quickly launched into nearly every other sport there was. So NBA, NFL, and into things like NASCAR and PGA and WTA and tennis and everything else. So we've kind of covered the gamut at this point, but still hockey is our core sport, and we love it. And so that's why we love working with teams like the Winterhawks, and they're doing just a heck of a job of getting things going. So our work centers around really working with what is the big middle, like those people who play hockey and maybe don't care so much about what this, what a Pride Night means, or what these celebration nights, what they mean, or just want to enjoy the game. And really, this is where we bring a little bit of awareness, bring some visibility, bring some discussion to the forefront as to what is hockey and what do we want it to be. And in that vein, when we look ahead, who's playing hockey in 5, 10, 20 years? And how do we go after those demographics of people and help hockey be the biggest, strongest game it possibly can be? And so really our values align with really what is almost any team's, which is we want to make sure hockey is full stands, full players on the ice, and lots of people coming to watch the game. So our excitement to working with the Winterhawks and Pride Night really kind of centers around that, and I think the Winterhawks do a great job of what they're doing. As you said, I mean the jerseys are just outright sexy. They kill it every year, but this looking good. I'm so excited to see what everything looks like on the ice, but you'll also see that You Can Play logo on the rink boards. So if you're in the arena, make sure you get your picture next to the You Can Play logo down there, and cheer the boys on to victory.
Now, progress doesn't happen in a straight line. We all know that to some degree or another, but we've been seeing, I think, some improvement in in the culture and the approach to the community. But last year, specifically, we saw a growth in some pushback stemming around NHL Pride Nights and certain players refusing to participate, and what the league went and did by stopping any specialized jerseys and things of that nature that happened last year. And a part of a lot of the things that are happening within our culture in North America in the last 2-3 years. How has your job changed as you've been dealing with some of these issues and some of that pushback? Has it changed much? And do you feel like, there's a different kind of tide you've had to deal with?
Yes and no. I think what honestly happened in that situation, and in much like in other sports too, it's not just in hockey, but this happened in other sports. Frankly, right-wing groups that are trying to find wedge issues that work politically have found that they can make inroads at some of this kind of stuff. And so those players didn't come up with this on their own. The players who decided to not wear the jersey the first time were prompted by right-wing groups that want to, again, drive wedges. And I don't blame them. The players got a lot to deal with, got a lot to think about. But certainly it was it's going to be an issue as long as the political landscape looks the way it is. And so I think we probably have at least another year or two of this looking as rough sometimes as it has been. But we've not really changed our approach. And the unfortunate thing is that what got overshadowed last year for the NHL and for a lot of the leagues, CHL included, is last year was the best year they've ever had with outreach programs, fundraising, support of the community, and everything else. Even with all that going on, even with the news coverage as it was on Pride jerseys and Pride tape and everything else, it was the best year they ever had with advocacy work. And so we expect this year to, again, be the next, the best year we've ever had, and even eclipse last year. But unfortunately, the news likes to cover the fantastical thing. I guess what I like to say is 12 years ago when we got started, if one player would have worn a Pride jersey on the ice, it would have been an international news story for a month. Now the fact that one player isn't wearing a Pride jersey, we're getting this much press, that is a massive win for what we're doing. So it just shows how far we've come within just a decade and how impactful it has been. Again, nobody wants to take a half step back like that. Nobody wants that to happen from our perspective, but certainly it changed the way we're doing it. It changed what we're doing with the NHL and how that's working. Like no more on ice pre-match, or pre-game warm-up jerseys is a hit to us because all those jerseys got auctioned off and supported local LGBTQ outreach organizations and supported the community, doing good with mental health support and otherwise. So that's a hit, and we have to find a new way to get creative on that side of things. But truly, each of the clubs that we're working with, and the Winterhawks are a great example of this, are taking steps forward and finding a new way each year to make their work authentic. And again, this is about growing the game and keeping it strong and inviting in new fans and new players and everything else. And I think that's where, if we keep our eye on that, and this is not a political issue, this is about making hockey strong and bringing in new people to hockey. So we keep the focus on that and away from the distraction type items.
It's interesting the way we phrase it. I feel like that last response you gave me, it almost started referring to it as a political issue as far as particular right wing groups, but then finishing it with it's not. And I kind of, that's the thing that I push back. I mean, you can't argue with every troll every time, and it's tempting as it is, but it's people say it's keep politics out of hockey or whatever, and I'm like, or sport in general, and I'm like, well, it can only be political if there's one side of the aisle that doesn't think these people should have the right to exist or to be who they are, and politics to me should be zoning issues and marginal tax rates, not should this person get to live as their authentic selves. But at least in here in the States, I mean, it kind of is that way, and so it's and maybe that's one more reason why this fight will continue on for the foreseeable, like you mentioned. But it's just a thing I always come back to, that people want to refer to as politics as just a way to shut it out. But it really shouldn't be, but it kind of is.
100%. And I think you framed this in the right way. People are not politics. And so when people say, keep your politics out of my hockey, I'm with you. I don't want to talk about tax rates in hockey. I don't want to talk about policy development. That's not why I love hockey. It's about sport. But I think what they need to think about is, how did you first come to the game? Did you just wander up and hopped on a set of, on a patch of ice and start playing the game? Absolutely no. You were invited by somebody along the way. And what Pride Nights is inviting the LGBTQ community to hockey. It's not saying that straight people can't come to Pride Nights. It's not saying that, just because we're making a special invite, it's not for you. It's simply saying that we're going to focus on a community that has not been traditionally a hockey community, and we're going to focus on bringing them in and showing them how awesome the sport is. If that's politics, I guess I have a complete misunderstanding of what politics is. And I think that's where it's such an interesting thing to me where, well, what other demographics should we not allow to be in hockey? So, we're doing a huge amount of work right now on growing the women's game. And so women for a long time didn't feel like hockey was their place. And it took a lot of work and a lot of focused effort by a lot of people through a lot of years to say, no, here it is. And now we all get to watch this year while the PWHL kicks off, and it's packed stadiums. So it took that focused work to get on that. And I think this is the exact same thing to where when we do nights around ethnicity or sexuality, gender identity, or whatever it might be, it's about bringing visibility and saying you're welcome here in hockey where traditionally you've not been. And I think we of course get the question, well, when's the straight Pride Night? Every time we put up a Pride Night. And it's like, well, listen, of course the flippant answer is it's every night that hockey's played, of course. But really what it comes down to is, listen, at no point did you feel like hockey was not for you. But I can point out a bunch of people who do feel like hockey is not their sport, or they're not welcome in the stands, or they're not welcome on the ice. And so we have to make special invites for those communities to welcome them in. And I think that's, again, where the rainbow is one of those things. That's a start. This is a beginning of the conversation. So what the Winterhawks are doing, you're going to see a lot of visuals, the jerseys, everything else. It's a lot of fun. But the real work comes in, do they come back the next night to watch the non-theme night game? And that's when we know we're doing a good job, when they become a hockey fan. And that's, again, what's going to lead the way. It's about the sport is still leading the way. Once we get them in the building, we got to keep them in the building and make them, fans for life, participants for life. And again, I think that's why when the Winterhawks do this kind of work, you see them doing it in a great way and lasting past that first Pride Night.
Well, and when you say that, what's the evidence that this group of people don't feel like they belong, or don't feel like they might belong or are welcomed in the sport? I mean, just look at the fact that there hasn't been an openly gay player in the National Hockey League yet. And Luke Prokop is probably on the path to getting there. Hopefully, he's a very talented young player and brave for taking that step. But when we know the percentage of the population of people that are a part of the community, and yet none have openly played in the National Hockey League, that speaks volumes, doesn't it? And so this is a step that hopefully will make more and more people welcome to be themselves. Because I'm sure there have been some who aren't open who've played. But once that starts to happen, and events like what you're doing continue to happen, I mean, I would have to think a big part of the hope, yes, is for building the fan support, but also for people who are openly gay to feel comfortable playing the sport and coaching in the sport and working in the sport and everything of that nature.
100%. And it's well said. And when we talk to players, there are absolutely players in the NHL and every pro league there is that are members of the LGBTQ plus community, but are not out. And that could be because they don't want to be out, right? That could be a choice they're making. But I can also tell you that there's a hesitation because, do I lose endorsements? Do I get the next contract? Am I played less? Absolutely, those questions are still there. And if those questions exist, it tells you where the state of the game is with that community. Because if the question is there and it's not 100%, that wouldn't matter at all, or it would benefit you. Until that is the statement made, when the question gets asked, our work's not done. And so I think it's a consideration, absolutely. And I think we have to look at it realistically to say how are we doing in this? And I think how are we on language? Are we are we allowed to share some rough language on here for podcast time?
I'm not going to tell you what to do.
So I'll use, because I'm not going to use homophobic language, but I'll use the word pussy. How many times do we hear that in hockey, on the ice, in practice, in our chirping, in our banter? Well, when we think about who that impacts, what that word means and why we're using it, does it have anything to do with hockey? Is it hockey language? No. It's smack talking, it's chirping. And when we think about, could we use words that maybe aren't going to impact a demographic of people in a way that I don't hear it in the same way, you don't hear it in the same way, but there's a big chunk of people who do hear it that way. If we continually went at somebody with a characteristic about them, or the way they dressed, or their hair color, or otherwise, they're going to leave hockey because they're not going to stick around and wait to see if you will change. And I think that's what really this awareness is about, is have we ever thought about what it sounds like when we're talking on the away trip, when we're sitting with our buddies in the stands watching the game? Have we thought about the way that we're smack talking the other team, or, you guys were talking about before the thing kicked off, like, hey, we got, football coming up and a little bit of smack talk back and forth. What does that sound like when we do it? Well, unfortunately, a lot of times it falls into homophobic language. And so if that's the case, and that's what we're doing every time we're talking some smack around the sport, those individuals who are impacted by that are not going to show up. Just like if we keep making fun of people with red hair, they're not going to come out and watch hockey. And we can't expect them to until we clean that up and we make a different choice. So I think, again, that's a small example of what this work looks like in the longer term, to then just bring attention to it and say, hey, have we ever thought about this? Maybe why they're not feeling comfortable, why they're not showing up to hockey to play or to watch. And I think that's where the work gets done, again, across the year. And that's, again, why I say this is not about, exactly like you said, the politics of it. This is about people and how they're treated. And if we want more customers, we treat our customers well. And I think that's exactly what we're asking teams to take the lead on, and then eventually the entire sport population.
Yeah, that's a pretty good example there. Of like, and I personally have had to, over the years, tried to change some of the language I use, and that's that you used a word that I still use, and I use more than I should, and it's a thing I gotta think about. But there's other words I have walked away from and tried to moderate myself and try to continue to evolve. But it's a thing, and I use the example all the time. I'm like, look, there's a million words in the English language I can use to put somebody down. I can stay away from like 2 or 3 of them at least.
Exactly. Yeah. There's some really good banter out there. Stick to that.
I can challenge your toughness and challenge your character in many ways without having to resort to, particular words. And it's, and so you can go around that. I can say that this thing over here sucks because X, Y, and Z without having to say that, oh, that's gay or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's a thing that
exactly
that we can all learn and continue to evolve and try to be better. And you've kind of exposed me personally. I've got work to do like all of us.
And listen, you're not alone. It's everyone else. It's me. I do this work every day, and it's me too. And what I like to say, I come from a rugby background. I'm a rugby player and referee, and so every once in a while I open my mouth and my college rugby coach falls out, or my older brother or sister falls out, or my teammate falls out of my mouth, because this is where we learn this stuff. We learned it growing up, and we didn't necessarily know what it meant. And it's also why we like to say sport's not homophobic, but unfortunately we all learned how to smack talk each other in a homophobic way in many cases. And so again, that's not the only solution here. We have other work to do too, but if we can work on the language as a first step, and then we give some visibility and some special invites in a second step. Like, there's some amazing gay hockey programs around the country, including up in, Pacific Northwest. There's a bunch of great teams, but, gay hockey is wonderful, but how about hockey being inclusive? Any team, not just go play for the gay team. We want you to be playing for any team and feel comfortable sitting in that team. And so I think that's where that's again the work as we look across what sport can do and the positive benefits sport can make. Yes, sport can change the world from a political standpoint when we look at the big issues, but really where sport benefits us is kid shows up on a Tuesday to a practice, has maybe some words that they use at home with their family or with their friends, and they never really thought them through. Coach is the first person who said, hey, not that language, not on my ice. That makes that kid think for 2 seconds and say, oh, okay, I've never thought about not using that. Coach told me no. I don't even need a reason. Coach just told me not to use it. There it is, and I'm moving forward. All of a sudden, that's a very small chunk fixed, and you multiply that across all of sport, and all of a sudden the positive impact starts to happen across society. So it's about the positive impact sport can make both at the macro and at the micro, and I think that's where the work has to happen on both ends. So for us, our coach education, our player education at the youth leagues is vital, but it's also vital, like the Winterhawk visuals, that you're going to see those guys in those jerseys, and that's the top end meeting the bottom end of the middle.
So I know, big broad strokes, over time you hope it has
the kind of impact you're looking for. When you're dealing with people who are a little more set in their ways on these opinions, or who are pushing back for things that they believe are connected to, religious beliefs or background, that kind of stuff, how do you deal with that? Knowing that it's coming from a very ingrained place, an emotional place, a passionate place, and find some common ground and get things closer to where we want it to be.
Yeah, the religious thing is an interesting one because it's almost used as I don't want to be questioned about what I'm about to tell you, so I'm going to use religion as the item to bring up. I mean, there's all kinds of readings of religion in different ways. None of them say that we shouldn't allow LGBTQ plus people in hockey. So I think it's an interesting approach to bring religion into what it is, especially when people say, I don't want politics in my sport, but I'll very happily bring religion into my sport. So it's a very interesting step to take when we're trying to then keep sport pure. But certainly, I think that our approach from an organizational standpoint is we work with what is straight people in sport, and we try to make them straight allies. That's what our organization does. I know we're seen as an LGBTQ plus organization, and we absolutely advocate for the community. But we work mostly with the 90% of sport, which is that huge amount of straight people that we're trying to make into straight allies. And I think when you talk to those people, we're not asking you to run down the street with a rainbow flag in a parade. It's about simply thinking through what you're saying another half step. Have you used some language that you could probably clean up? Is there a way I could specifically invite somebody to the table so that you feel welcome here? While I'm sitting in the stands and I see somebody looking confused, do I lean over and say, hey, listen, I didn't understand the blue line in the beginning either. How about I help you out here? It's that kind of stuff that we're asking people to do. It's not about you coming out on a date with me. It's not about you approving of a lifestyle or a world or a thought or a belief system. It's about, do we want hockey to be the best it will be? And honestly, that means every seat is sold in every arena where hockey's played. And I think that for us is where we want the community engaged. I'll give you a stat that is really the core of why we do this. 25% of kids that are part of the LGBTQ plus community participate in sports versus about 68, 69% of straight kids. And so that stat shows you to where first of all, the opportunity is to be able to grow into that demographic of individuals and bring them into hockey and say, we are the sport for you. Maybe not every sport, but we are the sport for you. And I think as well, then that shows you, the detriment to, we all remember what hockey gave us and what sport gave us: teamwork, belonging, love, identity, friendships. And that is vitally important for positive mental health outcomes. And for a community who needs those outcomes maybe more than most, it's really vital that we do this work. But certainly, I mean, listen, we're going to have religious things brought up, political things. We're going to have, I just don't believe in it. Whatever it is, there's going to be a lot of that kind of stuff brought to bear. But what it comes down to is, I guess, I don't understand how that means I'm going to be successful or not successful in hockey. You're going to have to explain that to me as to how that's going to impact it. I'm here. I'm sitting next to you. I'm not fake or, going to go away. So at some point, we all live on the planet together, and I don't judge them for their religious beliefs, and they shouldn't judge the community for the way they're living their lives.
Well, I mean, at least in this country, we used to use scripture to justify, slavery, before the Civil War. So, I mean, you can, I feel like there's, probably similar undercurrents there as far as, you find it's like a buffet. I mean, you find the parts that you like, and then you get rid of the rest of it, and just kind of,
100%.
An unfortunate thing. But you do bring up a good point, Kurt, that I wanted to get to as far as, allies. I mean, Sean and myself are both, allies. I don't know what your orientation is. It's not important, to this conversation. But you mentioned, a gay hockey team versus a hockey team that is accepting, and they're very different things. I mean, again, this roughly 10% of the population that identifies, they're not going to be able to move the needle themselves in any way, shape, or form. It's going to take the 90% of us that that don't identify as LGBTQ, and so by having allies, that's the only way that these people are going to feel comfortable to be who they are, and in this case, come to a hockey game with us.
100%. And so I'll preface this with, I do not mean to relate our community with the disabled community in this way, but certainly when you look at a wheelchair ramp, if somebody is in a wheelchair and wants to work in a building and there's no wheelchair ramp, they're not even going to apply for the job. And so when you think about how we go out to communities and bring them into sport, we got to build the ramp first if we expect them to come in and be part of our organization. And again, when it comes down to it, we all love wheelchair ramps. Every single one of us uses them, but they're really important for a key demographic of our society that we want to make sure are included. And so when you think about how does that translate to hockey, what are we going to do to reach out to minority communities, to minority ethnic communities, racial communities, religious communities? There's a whole lot of new religions moving to Canada and the U.S. that we're expanding every single day. And are we reaching out to those communities as well as LGBTQ plus community and others? So I think there's no one I don't want in hockey. And so how do I look at this and say, let's make a couple steps to make sure that we are prepared to accept new people in the door, because they absolutely won't come if we're not prepared. But if we go ahead and prepare ourselves and act as if, we can be ready to accept these new communities into hockey and be ready to put them on the ice and in stands to watch the game. And I think that's what's exciting for me to, as we do this work, is every single day we see a new community light up and say, wow, this sport's actually really cool when you sit down and watch it. Like, yeah, we've been telling you this. And so we can get past maybe some of the apprehension, and you get into the stands and you sit next to somebody who's willing to share the rules with you. It's just the best experience. So I think this is where our work centers around, let's get the work done before you even have an issue. That way we never have that issue. When someone comes to hockey, they don't have to worry about that issue.
Is there a balance? You hear these days, some of the response is, oh, it's in my face or pushed down my throat. Very odd use of language there. Yeah, but when you're dealing with that, and then you'll hear someone say, the events and the promotion and that kind of stuff has a counter reaction. Is there a balance to be found somewhere of saying, hey, we want to keep doing this, but we're not necessarily be confrontational, or is it important to confront it? Or you know what I mean? Like, how do you feel? Do you find a middle ground with that? Is that a constantly evolving thing for you as you try to deal with, the pushback that you get?
Well, I absolutely hear that all the time, and I think that's one of the first things that's said is, "Well, God, you don't have to shove it in my face." And I think it's so interesting of a comment to make, in that if you think a social post is shoving something in your face, yes, you're going to hate a lot of things very quickly, because all social posts are doing is trying to then get more information out about their thing. So I think the shoving in your face is an interesting one. At no point in history has somebody from the LGBTQ plus community walked up to your front door, knocked on it, and said, "Can I convert you?" And I think it's such an interesting thing to say we're shoving something in your face by simply recognizing a community and welcoming them into a game. And I guess, again, if that's the way that you feel, that's fine. I can show you 100 examples of what is greater than that shoved in your face every single day. Is Tide laundry detergent shoved in your face, or is it advertised to you as an option you can use? I don't know.
Or a kiss cam.
Yes, kiss cam. Great example. Great example. So I think this is where it's such an interesting thing to say. But what I will say is this: the trans community is what is at the heightened point of discussion right now. Trans individuals and trans athletes especially want to keep their head down and want to be members of society just left alone, and we're the last people looking for a fight. And so and the way I described this actually to my family the other day was, they're not shoving something in your face when talking about trans community, or when talking about, the drag queen story hour or things like this. They had their front door broken down. People invaded their home and started punching them in the face. And the fact they're now punching back is not shoving something in your face. It's simply stepping up and defending themselves. So they did not want to become a political issue. They did not want to become a campaign issue. Or there's been over 600 pieces of legislation put through state governments in the states around the trans community. Like, what? Are you serious here? Like, do you think that they went out and said, you really should legislate against us? Or did that come from somewhere else and now they're defending themselves? And again, so I guess on my fervent side, absolutely it's not shoved in your face. It's simply stepping up for a group that is in need of defense right now in many cases. But on the other side of things, lots of things are shoved in our face by the way of advertising, advocacy, and otherwise. And I think, yes, it's being shoved in your face. And look at beneath any post that any hockey team or other sport team has made around Pride, and just see why it's needed. I'll refer the Avs. The Avs the other night had a Pride game. They posted their Pride game stuff on social media. Just read the comments underneath and understand why this stuff is needed.
Yeah, I'm a long-time Avalanche fan myself, and I was keeping an eye on that kind of thing. And in contrast, so the Winterhawks played Saturday night in Spokane, and it was military night. And they had military jerseys, and that's cool. And they had, some pomp and circumstance with that. And I closely monitored, their socials. I looked at their Twitter account mostly, and I didn't see anyone pushing back on, anything political, or the same types of arguments. They had special one-off jerseys. And, I don't know if there's anything that's more political than the United States military and how it's deployed. And, there's a lot of actions that a lot of us don't necessarily agree with over, many, many years. I mean, we were in Vietnam for 8 years. I don't think anyone was really happy with that. And so, but at the same time, we don't push back on it because, we see, you can see both sides of the coin, and it's not a, there's plenty of passages in Scripture about, not, killing people and whatnot.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But strangely enough, it just didn't get that same pushback. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. And like Hockey Fights Cancer is another one the NHL does. And of course, when we relate it to things like Military Appreciation Night, people say, well, the military and the LGBTQ plus community are not the same thing at all. And I understand that statement. But I guess what I would say is there's lots of people who can go to a Military Appreciation Night and say, you know what? I don't like what they do, but I'm going to support the people who do it because I love that you have stepped forward and volunteered for our country. And again, I don't need you to sit with me, at our next advocacy meeting. I simply want you to make it safe and welcoming for me to be at hockey. So our ask is pretty small here. And so when we talk about, we mentioned ally and advocate, really it's about understanding that your voice where you sit can help somebody else be felt more welcome. And it's the exact same thing we all did when we had a new friend that came into our new school. We let them sit with us at lunch. And so, and that small kindness probably made a huge difference in that person's life and made a difference again in your life as well. So I think that's the difference. And you don't have to join the community. You don't have to show up to the parties. You don't have to walk in the parades. But simply, we can all do a whole lot of work to just make somebody feel welcome in those stands or on that ice, to say, listen, you're welcome here. You're part of the game. And that's really what we're asking people to think through. It's not about, again, joining the community and joining our monthly meetings. It's not like that at all. It's much more so around, can you understand that hockey has been a bit abrasive to this community for a long time, and other sports too. And we want to fix that. And we want to make it a welcoming place because, again, we want more hockey and more often. So with that, we need more bodies. And at some point, we top out with suburban straight white kids, frankly. And so when we do that, we need to look for other demographics to bring into a game. And this is a wonderful right demographic that could love hockey if we engage correctly. And I think we're finding that women took to hockey and are thriving and killing it. And inner city athletes taking to hockey, and just communities we didn't think were hockey players. And we realized, well, actually, yes, they are when properly welcomed in.
And unfortunately, the reality is sometimes it takes somebody who isn't in that community or that group or whatever the case may be, stepping up and being supportive to get others who also aren't to take notice and sort of realize that maybe they have approached this subject the wrong way, or maybe they should be more welcoming. Because for the longest time, if you advocate for something, people assume it's because you are involved in that or you are that. For example, like I joined our local Pride committee, then there's a certain segment of people that assume that must mean you're gay, right? Mm-hmm. But when you aren't and you step up and you support that community, then there's more people. I just think it has a different kind of impact with some people who may not have thought that way. You look at Travis Dermott, right? When you have someone who steps up and puts themselves on the line in some way to support a community without it being because it's specifically relating to themselves, sometimes that can hit a different note with people who weren't as likely to listen.
I love that. You bring up such a great example. And for those listening at home, Travis put some pride tape on his stick when basically it was told by the NHL they weren't allowed to do so. But this is a great example. And I think we can be honest with each other. If that athlete's not at my level, I'm not going to necessarily listen as much. Or if that person never played hockey, why would I listen to you about hockey? We all kind of have that. And hockey's a bit of a niche sport. You got to be a little tough to play it. It's wonderful in that way. But listen, I think that's why we do pretty well in this space versus maybe some raw advocacy organizations that don't work in sport as much, because we are sport. We usually send a hockey player in to talk to people. It's a lot of times a straight hockey player that's going to go in and talk about it to say, listen, we can do better here. And I think, again, you bring up a good point, which is our voice is so important to that person you invite to sit at your table for lunch in whatever way figurative that is in your life. That makes the biggest difference because you have that level of influence within your sphere. And so when you make that statement, it's huge. I always tell people the hardest place to make change is the group chat with your boys or with your girls. That's the hardest place because it's your friend group and you're busting on each other and you're chirping on there and it's a lot of fun. And you know what? If somebody makes a comment in there, do you come back and be like, hey, come on? Well, no, a lot of times. We're like, well, it's our buddies. I wouldn't want to be made to feel stupid, or are they going to think I'm gay? And I think that's one of those places where I always say, if you can find your footing in that kind of situation, you can do it anywhere. And that's a great example of one to where, again, if we're in hockey, we can make the change within hockey a lot easier than somebody out from the outside coming and knocking on the door and say, hey, everyone, let's do better. And again, coming from rugby, if you don't show up and you've not played the game, you don't get listened to as a coach. You don't get listened to as an administrator. And same thing as an advocate, it goes a lot further when it's somebody that has a like voice that has been on the field or in the court or in the pool with me that's going to be saying those things and saying, hey, listen, we can do better.
You mentioned Travis Dermott, and that was a big deal as far as, breaking the literal ban on the pride tape. And he had a lot on the line as, not a household name, not the most established guy in that league. I mean, how valuable is it to the movement that you have guys like Connor McDavid, using the pride tape and being on record as being an ally and being supportive of the community? I mean, you mentioned, when you guys started this project years ago that you would have, killed to have, anybody of any stature step up. I mean, what's it like having, arguably the best player in the world, on your side?
Oh, 100%. And it's miles of credit that I give these guys. I cannot give them enough credit to say, listen, they understand how their voice can be influential and they utilize it. That's not an easy thing for anyone, especially at their level with the following they have and the scrutiny they get every day. But I think they get it really well, which is we benefit from strong fan bases that follow us, that love us, that are diehards, that will buy the jerseys, buy the food and bev in the arenas, go to the away games as well as the home ones, watch us on TV. And I think, again, that's where, when you're looking for diehard fans, this is a community that is ripe to be part of hockey. So I think they understand that, and they're willing to reach out and utilize that voice. I think as well, a lot of these players have what is the rest of the population has. be it a brother, an uncle, a sister, an aunt, a parent, a child that is part of the community, and they understand that, again, all humans on the planet just trying to get by. It's hard enough with normal life that we all have to deal with. And I'm going to do my part to make sure that they feel welcome next to me in the thing I love, which is, for them, hockey. And the rest of us, it could be our workplace. It could be our, evening shinny league. It could be our, local basketball league. Whatever we do, we all have a place to play here. And our voice may not reach as far as, McDermott's or some of these guys, but certainly we have the exact same place in this conversation to say, hang on, let's make sure somebody's welcome here. Or, you know what, we can get rid of that word or that phraseology, or we can, think this through a little bit better. And I think that's all we ask people to do in this work is think this through. And you can see some really big examples of that. And I'm telling you, generations of kids are watching this happen and say, oh, maybe hockey is for me.
Specific to junior hockey, I mean, I think even in light of what's happened with pro sports, it feels like junior hockey has continued to be strong in the places where it was and continue to grow in their support. Portland's been a great example of it. And a kind of community, I think, a market that would be more likely to be very welcoming. But how have you seen the reaction continue in junior hockey among the teams, the players, the supporters, etc.?
Listen, I think it's varied everywhere. So you've got leagues, and junior hockey is a great example. You got teams that do everything and are at the top of the heap, and you have teams who, maybe do nothing at all and don't celebrate Pride Night in any way. Or if they do it, it's kind of what I'd say Pride in name only kind of approach to it. So I think the variation is expected. I think I don't fault the athletes or even the front office of the clubs. Sometimes I know there's 3 people and an intern running some of these clubs that are absolutely doing an amazing job with what they have. So we don't fault anybody for what it is. I think what we try to do is lay out a path that they can always do more or a way they can do it. That's where our organization comes in. We try to support them. I'll give an example. Kitchener Rangers is a good example of a team that, we've worked with for a couple of years, and they're a really good program put together, and they thought this through as to how it actually permeates through the business side of their team, as well as, we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing on advocacy. But what we like to say is inclusion is business. This has as much a business case as it does a heart and soul case. I wish people did it only for the right reasons and for, because it was the right thing to do. But absolutely, there's a business case to make here, which is, again, future of hockey. The younger generations currently hover around about 20 to 25% identify with the 2S LGBTQ plus community. Does that mean that 25% of our youth are gay? No. They identify with the community of some sort. And again, we expand the alphabet every day as to including individuals and including groups into the organization. I think what you see is it's about love. It's about acceptance. It's about, frankly, fun. It's about, living your life the way that you want to live it. That's very attractive to lots of people. So when you look forward into the future of, if I'm a junior hockey program and I'm like, first of all, I want to get kids on the ice, and I also want to fill stands. 25% of my future customer base is part of this identity and part of this community. That's something I can't ignore. And so I think it's a business case, it's a business thought as much as it is the heart and soul side to look at this and say, what are we going to do to cater to and to bring in a customer base that is ever changing? And again, I think a pretty strong demographic to go after that could be great within hockey and other sports. And so I think it's if they've not thought about it yet, and if clubs aren't going as far as the Winterhawks go on their Pride Night and their advocacy, I think they will soon because it's a growing side of a business model. When, frankly, the other side that has the crazy comments online are a aging and dying population and shrinking population of those in younger demographics. And so you can stick with those who are going to ban Bud Light, or you can stick with those who are growing into Bud Light. And so I know the future of business and how they're looking at it.
Well, and you mentioned Bud Light, and that was it's not my flavor, but I respect the right to exist. But that's the thing, right? So Bud Light is not they're not immoral, they're amoral. They're a for-profit organization. They are making money for Anheuser-Busch and InBev. That's what they do. And they have made, same with Nike, same with any number of things, Starbucks, they're soulless beasts. They don't have a conscience by definition. But they have decided that by reaching out and being inclusive, there is more money to be made than go in the other direction, than Chick-fil-A, for example, although they don't do that anymore, but they dropped that stuff. But, and so, I say that as that's the way the tide is turning. We are winning, and inclusion is going to win, and use, these for-profit, corporations as an example of they know that there is, more of us than there is of them, as far as, being inclusive and being an ally than being a bigot and being prejudiced. That's the direction they're going. So it's definitely a barometer of what's to come. And if there's a scoreboard, the right people are winning.
That's perfectly said, and I think it's there are really smart people at those companies who are looking 10 and 20 years down the road, and they know what's coming, and they're moving to it. And I think I always relate this to, you can believe in or deny global warming and climate change, but every airport in the world is extending their runways because in hotter weather, planes need a longer runway to take off. So you can be on whatever side you want, but where it matters, they're already planning for this. And so it's one of those crazy things to where, listen, I wish it went smoother. I wish it would have happened 30 years ago. But we still need to do the fight every day. We still need to take those steps. But absolutely, we're on the way. And I think those who are in decision-making capacities at companies like that, and then again in sports franchises, in leagues, and even as you get down into community local sport, understand that sport is meant to be for everyone, and it's nature. It brings people together who are of differing backgrounds and demographics and makes them do magical things on the field of play, on the ice, in the pool, on the courts. Like, that is what sport is about. And I think when you drill into that, at what point is that leaving certain people out or not inviting them in? And it doesn't make any sense if you really believe in sport as to what it's meant to be. If you believe that sport is your thing that you should own and you get to govern who is in it, you and I don't have the same definition of what sport is.
Well, and again, we talk about growing the game, and that's, it's a constant theme in this conversation and many conversations like it. And, this Portland team, I mean, this is a league, where if you have 5,000 people, you feel pretty good about it. And this is a 10,000 seat building. I mean, you have a almost infinite amount of room inside your building to put butts in seats. And so, that would be, I sometimes I think about if you were, in that marketing office or in that ticket office and you have that, that capacity, it has to be, pretty exciting to find new ways and different ways to try to bring people in. And then you always going to have turnover anyway. So you have to replace, folks that, lose interest or move or whatever. And so, and then, as we just saw World Juniors and the U.S. doesn't win gold every year. How do we get, more kids playing the game so we can continue to win gold every year as the best hockey country on the planet? And so it's, more people playing, more people watching. I mean, it's kind of the...
Is there a way for me to mute you from here?
No, you're exactly right. I think it is the future of the game, and you can look at it in whatever way you'd like to. But I think it's very difficult to argue that racial diversity in our current sport model, did not bring a more vibrant and interesting game to almost every sport there is. And so I think it's an interesting thing to see where, well, listen, where else can we take this thing we call sport? And it's going to be rule changes. It's going to be innovation in the game, the way it's played. It's going to be, frankly, it was cross ice for the minis a few years back, and people lost their minds about that because it's not hockey, and kids will never learn how to play the game. And all of a sudden, youth hockey expanded because more kids were more successful. We have to innovate in sport, and I think it's got to be on the ice, in our rules, in the way that we market the game, in the way that we look in the future. And I'm excited that sports are even looking at it this way. But to your point, we got an extra 5,000 seats to sell every week. I know a demographic that has some disposable income, likes to party, likes to come out and support the teams in the things they love, but needs an invitation and to know that you have their back when the going gets tough. And I think that's where this work is so important is, when a state law comes up, are you actually going to say something about it? Or are we going to stay silent? Well, your ticket buyers go away pretty quickly when they're not defended. And so I think that's where, it's the advocacy and allyship works both ways. And so supporters stay loyal when there's loyalty to have.
Well, and you framed the business case on a number of occasions here. And let's be real, where is the greatest opportunity for growth in hockey business-wise? It's in large urban centers, especially in the United States. Yep. And where do you see the majority of people who are part of the LGBTQI plus community? Large urban centers, right? So that's got to be one of the biggest segments of population in the areas where they have the biggest opportunity for growth. It's just pretty simple math, I would think.
Absolutely. And I think that's exactly the sales pitch that we make. And again, I wish, talking to some ownership groups of clubs, big and small, pro and amateur, they get it. They're like, no, we're doing this for the right reasons, no matter what the bottom line shows us. But I'm also happy to talk to those groups who are like, no, prove to me this makes sense. Okay, I get it. You need to protect your own bottom line. You want to make sure this is going to make sense to you. So we have to do better as a business case from our advocacy as well. But I think when we do make that business case and we show it, a like-to-like game, pride game versus normal game, how are we doing on ticket sales, on the food and bev, on merch, whatever else it might be. I think we can show a tick up of things, and that's one of the things that can be shown there. But again, I think that only comes with authentic connection from a team, and that could be, again, Avs just sent a couple players out to a local drop-in center, mental health drop-in center here in Denver. Like, huge amount, and the kids went nuts, and just the benefit that I've had, and that they're helping that organization raise money. So that's where we're going to make some authentic connection back the other way. It can't just be one-way traffic. Teams can't just say, hey, listen, we pull the pride lever and we get some of the money from the community. That's not how this goes. It's about we actually bring an authentic connection to a community and bring you into hockey in a real way, that you feel like you have a home here. And of course, we want to be that team that you advocate for in that home. So it's a very different approach to it. And I think that's where, fans are getting more fickle. I think you mentioned it. Fan turnover is at an all-time high. Fans are getting more fickle. They need an experience. They need a value statement outside of just what happens on the field or on the ice.
Kurt, did you follow last year about this time? I can't remember when exactly it was, but the Seattle Thunderbirds and their Pride Night and how that story kind of unfolded.
I don't think so. My team that works with hockey might have been a little bit closer to it than I was, but no, I'm not familiar.
So, I use the weight, whatever weight we have of our sister podcast, WHL Unfiltered, and they didn't have a Pride Night on the schedule for the Thunderbirds, and honestly, some Seattle fans saw how we did it here in Portland, and the jerseys and the pomp and circumstance, and decided that they wanted in, even though there wasn't one scheduled, and they just did their own DIY style, renegade style.
Oh, I love it. And
so it turned out pretty cool, and we had Brock McGillis on the show and help to push it, to try to set it up, kind of like what we're doing now, and similar conversation. And the team actually made up graphics, and Luke Prokop was in that game. And they had the Pride tape, and they made graphics they put on the Jumbotron, and the fans essentially forced the hand of the team, and they set up and did it and went along with it. And it was, it's pretty powerful. I mean, to be able to influence, the Seattle fans influence their favorite hockey club and to push them in the correct direction, and then have the powerful image of Prokop being on that team and having the tape on his stick, and it turned out to be a really cool moment. As much as Portland fans don't really want, Seattle to do well on the ice. I mean, they probably want them to be able to enjoy a moment like that. So it was a pretty cool, and I guess I don't know if we'd really done a follow up on one of these shows, afterwards, but we definitely, tried to help set it up ahead of time.
No, and I'll tell you what, the team is doing what they're calling their first ever Pride Night game on February 14th. So this is where the community influenced the Thunderbirds to do exactly that. And I think this is where we do a lot with soccer in the sport of soccer, but with the soccer fan groups. And so the soccer fan group, basically every soccer club in the world has a fan group that kind of follows them. They beat the drums in the stadium, and they're great groups to work with. But a lot of the soccer clubs have started their Pride Nights from the fan group starting it, and then it seeped into the team, and they realize, oh, this is actually kind of cool. We want to do something with this. And it comes from fan initiatives. And again, how do I use my voice? It could be that I make my local sand volleyball Tuesday night beer league more inclusive, or I can then work with the team I love, or at my office or otherwise. We all have that spot to sort of insert ourselves and our voice into the process. And I love that's an awesome story about the Thunderbird community coming around this. And I don't know that I'll actually make it to the games. I'm going to try to make it up there to the game for the Thunderbirds game this year. But absolutely, I cannot wait to see what it looks like. And credit to those people. And again, Seattle Pride Hockey is I don't know if you are familiar with that organization. Like, they're amazing. They're one of the best in the world that do what they do. So credit to them. I'm sure they had a whole lot of voice around that.
Well,
now
go ahead, Sean.
I was just going to say, we've talked a lot, but for those who are hearing this, what are different ways that somebody who wants to be supportive of these types of initiatives or what you do as an organization, big and small, what are some ways that they can do that?
Yeah, in some of our training, we do parent training. And one of the things I say is when you're sitting in the stands at the long day of hockey that I know parents do, and you hear the banter in the stands and someone says something, are you gonna make a comment? If it's not your kid. If it is your kid, you absolutely would make a comment. You're going to step up, and maybe it's gloves off at the time. But if it's not your kid, do you say something? And that's really where it comes down to. It's that small stuff where, hey, again, your Tuesday night sand volleyball league, and someone throws, some homophobic stuff across the net. Do you say, hey, just not here, no more? Or do you just be like, haha, yeah, as many of us do, which is the uncomfortable laugh and move on because they don't want to fight this battle. That kind of stuff, the small stuff done consistently over time, makes so much of a bigger impact than the big banner stuff like a pride parade. Those are important. We've got to get the visibility out there. But truly, it's the everyday stuff. Have you added your pronouns on your social media profile? Do you have a small pin that you put on your hockey bag or your jacket or your lanyard you have your keys on that can show an inclusive communication out to somebody? Do you make the small comments in your group chats? Do you say, hey, listen, pick a different word, or hey, not appropriate? Just having some of that stuff in your back pocket ready to say it. When you see something happening, do you step in the middle of it? And I think all of that kind of stuff is wildly more impactful than any parade ever will be, because it's the everyday stuff in every town, America, every town, Canada. And that's the stuff that, what we teach coaches. It's not about your one pride game per season. It's about the small stuff every day. And when you've built an environment to where a kid feels comfortable to come and talk to you, you are doing a heck of a job. When your retention rate goes up, you're doing a heck of a job because kids want to stick around you. And so that's one of those things where, again, the impact and the change is in the 1% better every day. It's not in huge 20 and 50% jumps. So that's where we say, and honestly, what we teach is, Pride tape is a great example. Wrap something you got in Pride tape and then just keep it in your bag or keep it in your coaching kit year round, or keep it, as a parent, throw a roll of Pride tape in your minivan driving the kids to hockey. Or if you play a sport, throw a bit of Pride tape out there, and all of a sudden you have something that's always there that people kind of see, oh, very cool. And most people walk by it to say, oh, just rainbow tape. It means nothing to me. But the people who are looking for it, it is an island in the storm. It is a place that says, oh, this is my sport. I am welcome here. And that makes all the difference. So that's the small stuff I'd say in your life. And I'm happy to give, please feel free, anybody reach out to me or our staff to talk about this, because we empower people all the time with this small stuff. Because I'm not trying change the way you live your life completely. It's more so this very small stuff that makes a huge impact that maybe you'll never see or never hear about. But please know that it does make that impact.
Pretty interesting stuff and pretty valuable conversation. At least I hope that listeners find it valuable. We've had you for some time now, Kurt. Do you have any?
I'm a rambler. I'm sorry about that, guys.
That's what these shows are supposed to be, and the more you and the less of me, the better the show is going to be as well. But do you have any kind of final thoughts as we tie a bow on this episode?
Well, listen, I think first of all, get out to the arena. We want the Winterhawks to be cheered on to victory. I believe in them. I believe they got Kelowna this time around. So I hope it goes well. I know the community of hockey listening to your podcast, whatever you can do, your voice is the important part. And however you find a way to use that to make life just a fraction easier for the person sitting next to you is again, it's wildly valuable. And right now I'm asking you to levy it upon hockey and levy it upon sport. And I think that's where, again, whenever you want to chat ideas, I'm here for it. But I just appreciate you guys taking this much time to kind of focus on this stuff because it's not always the most sexy content. So it's really, really great to be able to talk to you and share this with your listeners.
All right. Well, I really appreciate your time, Kurt, and appreciate the work you guys do over there at the You Can Play project.
Thank you. Thank you very much.